Hey, David Aiken with Checkerhead Brewing and another tips and tricks video for brewers around the world. Today we're talking about post-primary fermentation additions. Now this could be a hop addition, which would be a dry hop, but I'm not using hops for any of these additions, so I'm just calling it a post-primary addition. We've got red currants that are going into a red currant farmhouse ale. We've got coconut that's going into a coconut blonde ale, and this gets toasted in the oven before we add it. And we've got blackberries that are going to go into a Blackberry Whip, or Belgian style Blackberry Whip. For each of these additions, I like using these mesh bags, and I'll put a link to where to get these. It's a simple thing you can find on Amazon. I make basically a tea bag. I make sure that the bags are sanitized before I put them in the fermenter, add the various ingredients, and then dump them in the fermenter, which allows me to pop it in. And then when I'm done, I can remove it. Now for things like the coconut, and I do this with the hops when I do dry hopping as well, I use a stone inside the tea bag, which helps sink it down and to get as much contact with the beer as possible during that fermentation or that post-fermentation process when you're really trying to get those flavor additions into the beer. So I'm going to measure these things out. I need 1.75 kilos of the blackberries. I need 1.5 kilos of the red currants, and I need 375 grams of the coconut. I'm just going to speed this up, get the measurements all done, and then I'll talk a little bit about what happens to each one before I put it into the actual beer. So first one we're going to talk about is the red currants. Now these have a skin on the outside, but a lot of the juice just comes through that skin. I need to point out the fact that all the fruit being used has been put in a freezer, so it helps break down the cell walls as well, which also helps get the beer access to the juices and the flavors in the different fruits that we're using, just the currants and the blackberries. And I don't like to blend this because I find that those seeds and stuff can produce some tannin-y vibes, which I'm not a big fan of, so really we just want that currant juice, that tartness that comes from the currant juice to make it happen. We've got our mesh bag. We're going to dip it in Star San. In fact, everything that you're doing should be dipped in Star San to disinfect it before you put it in your beer, just to make sure it's as bug-free as possible. And this, all it is, I'm going to open up the fermenter just behind me. We're going to open up the bag. We're going to dump in the fruit. We're going to close it back up. Let it sit there for about a week. So, number one, let's do it. So next up, we're going to be looking at these blackberries. And with blackberries, they do have seeds inside, but I find that if you sort of run an egg beater through the berries themselves, it helps break up the skins on the berries itself without pulverizing the seeds to get that sort of bitter tannin vibe, but just allows the beer to have better access to the juice and the flavor that these berries provide. So we're going to beat them up with the egg beater, and then we're going to dump them in the fermenter. So we're next to the fermenter now for the Blackberry Whip. We've got our blackberry that I call a puree because it's been run through that egg beating process. We've got our little tea bag that's been soaked in Star San so that it's not providing any bacteria or anything, nice and disinfected. And we're just going to dump it straight into the fermenter with all that juice, all the berries, but holding all the pulp in this bag so that you don't spread it around and so that it's really easy to take out when you go to bottling at the end of the process. So we've got our coconut and our stove is set to 350 degrees. We've got a spatula, so every 3 minutes I'm going to take it out of the oven, give it a turn so that it doesn't burn on any sides. And in just a few minutes, we're going to get a nice golden brown color out of this. We're going to be putting it in the beer. All right, I like the color of that. I'm gonna stick with it. We're gonna let it cool down for a little bit so that it doesn't melt anything when it touches it, and then we're gonna put it in the beer. All right, so I let the coconut cool down, and the only thing that's different about this than the fruit is that I like to use a stone, and I've dipped this in star sand as well, but this rock I find helps submerge the coconut so that it gets better contact with the beer. For the other fruit, the currants and the blackberries, it doesn't really matter so much because the juices are gonna come out of it, but for the coconut, I wanted to have as much contact with the beer as possible, so I use a stone. We'll put that in, we'll do up the bag, we'll throw it in the fermenter, and then those 3 post-primary flavor additions will have been completed. All right, so let's just recap. We had 3 post-primary additions that got put into beers today. We had the red currants, we had the blackberries, and we had the coconut. Red currants, super simple, just pulled them out of the freezer, let them thaw out. Once they were thawed, put them into a sanitized mesh bag, tied up the mesh bag, popped it in the fermenter, done. Blackberries, made sure I had sanitized everything, the egg beater and all that, ran the berries through an egg beater just to break up the skins a little bit more, give the beer a little bit more access to the juice, and then put it in the mesh bag, put it in the fermenter. For the coconut, toasted it in the oven, made sure it was a nice dark golden brown, put it in the mesh bag, added a rock so it would sink and give a little bit more contact to the beer and the coconut, put it in the fermenter, tucked it away. Now I'm gonna leave those additions in the beer for about 7 days, then I'm gonna cold crash it for 2 or 3 days, and then pull the fermenters out, let them warm up to room temperature for bottling day. On bottling day itself, I sort of hang the bag, I keep it sort of in the fermenter, hanging it up so it can drip out, but that bag does an incredibly good job of keeping the pulp and the coconut matter and everything else out of the final beer, which is what you want. There you go, you got 3 different ways, or 3 slightly different ways of doing post-primary additions. Not quite dry hopping because there aren't hops, but in that sort of vein of dry hopping. I hope it gives you some great ideas for what to do on your own brew days, and I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, remember to hit like, hit subscribe, and if you have any comments or questions, pop them in the comment section below. I'll be happy to answer them. And on behalf of Checkerhead Brewing, it's been a pleasure having you here. Thanks for watching, and no matter where you are in the world, I hope you have a great brew day. Take care, everyone. We'll see you again.